What's up, players? Today's a good day. I got my Misfit shirt on. It's New Gear Day. It's warm out. I'm getting excited to mow the lawn like an old man that I am. But today we're going to talk about new gear in the recording studio. Specifically, some I have right here. And there's other stuff behind the camera that we're going to get to later on in this video. But for starters, let's talk about this stuff. And I'm going to be talking about this, specific gear and talk about how I got it, what kind of gear it is, etc. But I also want to talk about kind of a broad overview of buying gear for your new studio, right? Because there's a lot of considerations. You have money, you have space concerns, you have, what's going to give me the best sound, what's going to be the most improvement to my recordings. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're buying gear. Now, generally speaking, right, if you're going to do like a hierarchy of things you should buy, let's take a scenario that you have average level everything. You have average microphones, average recorder, average compressors, right? But you want to bring your recordings up to, that next level of fidelity. The first thing is always going to be, before anything else recording related, I can't say this enough in my videos, it's going to be you as a musician or the musicians you're recording and their songwriting abilities, both, songwriting and playing their instruments. That is by far going to have way more effect on anything ever. And as recording engineers, this is like a recording engineer series here, we cannot forget that, right? And if you are like me who does their own songwriting and their own recording, you can't forget about that. Like, I've been doing so much emphasis on, putting this studio together that, my songwriting has kind of taken a hit because of it. And, it's just something to think about, right? I know that's kind of disclaimer here. Now, talking about actual recording things, the first important thing is always going to be the room. Later on in the video, we're going to talk about room treatment. I finally got some room treatment. I haven't built it yet, but we'll talk about that later. That's always going to be your first thing, right? Because if the sound doesn't sound good in the room that you're in, then what's the point, right? No matter what recording chain you put in front of a bad sound, that sound's always going to be bad. As I've stated many times in this series, the acoustics in this room are very detrimental compared to the very large room downstairs I'm used to recording in. So it's becoming very obvious in the initial recordings that I have been doing in here. The second thing is probably going to be microphones, right? If once again, if the sound coming from your microphone is not going to be ideal, it doesn't matter what you have downstream of that microphone, it's never going to sound great, right? You could do some EQing, compression, blah, 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 but a nice microphone is always going to sound better than a cheap microphone, right? Now, for my case, if you've been watching this YouTube channel at all, all I do is talk about getting a U47 clone, either a kit or a pre-made one, because I don't have a capacitor microphone, and I definitely don't need any more dynamic microphones. I don't need any more ribbon microphones. I have the shiny box that I've used so many times. I have that new Bumblebee ribbon that I've been using now. So like for ribbon microphones, I'm good, but I do not have one condenser microphone, and I think it would be nice to have in my arsenal, right? To have every single type of microphone. And, I've been pretty specific about what I want. I want a U47 style. For the stupidest reason, I really just love looking at pictures of the Beatles recording in their early albums and seeing them sing and record in front of a U47 microphone. I don't know, there's just something special about it. If you know anything about U47s, or like U67s, U87s, that type of Neumann microphones, specifically U47s, to make a long story short, if you don't know, you can't get a microphone that is the same specification as a real U47, unless you're buying literally like a real one that you're paying thousands and thousands for. And even those, because of the vacuum tube that was used in those, eventually there's going to be no replacement for those vacuum tubes, the VK14 I believe it is. So again, eventually the actual U47 sound is going to be impossible per se, but the clones they sell today are supposed to be representations of the spirit of what they should sound like. Once again, I don't really care too much about sounding exactly about a U47. I just think I think it'd be kind of cool to be, as I've said, like in a lot of my videos, it's all about having fun and wanting to record as a home recordist like us or like me, who's an amateur, is not doing this for money, right? If I want to get a microphone that just makes me feel cool, makes me feel like I'm John Lennon in front of the microphone, what's wrong with that, right? We shouldn't feel shamed about getting a piece of gear just because of the way it looks or because you want to be like a certain someone. Who cares, right? It's just for fun, right? So anyway, I've been talking about that forever. Right now, monetarily wise, it's not my cards. I've been talking about getting the Mic and Mod clone kit forever, but because of a few reasons, I think I'm actually erring against that. One, just because of the tariff stuff going on, bringing stuff from Europe is just kind of a mess right now, and there's a lot of changes, and it's like I might buy it and have to pay a considerable amount of import fees. So that's one consideration. Second consideration is maybe we shouldn't get it the second consideration because it's kind of talking shit in a way. So I don't think that's really necessary. I'm getting sidetracked. Microphones. Anyway, I've been looking at the UT48, which is the the United Studios microphone. I think that's the company. The guy who designed that, I'm forgetting his name right now. Respected individual. That microphone is supposed to be a very quality microphone. It's supposed to be able to do a U47 sound as well as a U48 sound. I'm not going to get into intricacies of that right now. But anyway, I've been thinking about getting a tensor microphone. I'm not there yet. I think I've earned it, but monetarily wise, I can't afford it yet. So we'll wait. We'll wait on that, right? So room sound, so room treatment, right? That's going to be your first priority. Then microphones. Then what's next? I would say getting quality compressors, right? Because compressors are your most used item in your studio. I only have VCA compressors. Again, I've been talking about getting a hairball DIY kit of an 1176 style compressor. That would be nice just to have a different sound of my compressors because all my compressors sound very alike. So it would be nice to get a different sound in there. What else? I mean, obviously, if you have the money and you have the luxury of being able to choose what console you're recording into, that's going to have a gigantic effect, right? Because whatever preamps are built into your board, whatever op amps are in the circuitry, right, that's going to have a huge effect on your sound. I have the Tascam M3500 there, as you guys know. That thing, I mean, it's the only board I really know. I've used a TAC board before, TAC Model 5, but this is really the only board I've ever really known, and the preamps built into my ears are kind of lackluster. It's noisy, but listen, it is what it is. I'm dealing with it. There's mods you could do to make it sound better. That's for another day, right? But again, if you have the luxury to upgrade your console, that's going to have a huge effect on your sound, on your workflow. As you probably know, if you're getting a quality console, I mean, we're talking about the price of cars here. They're very expensive. So, for me, I'm in the budget rock kind of realm. Next thing, right, monitor speakers. That's going to be really important because whatever you're mixing, if you can't trust your monitors, your end result is never going to be exactly how you want it to as a recording engineer. Again, you could get by with some crappy stuff. I've gotten by with a lot of crappy stuff. However, if you're looking to make the fidelity of recordings better, quality monitors are going to help. Something that I think's low on the chain, which I think people kind of assume is going to be high on the chain, is going to be like boutique preamps. The preamps, I mean, that's going to add like 5% of your sound at the end of the day, right? It's not going to have that big of effect. That's going to be more of an incremental sound. That's it. What other type of gear? I mean, obviously, there's all different types of outboard gear, phasers and tape delays, etc., but I'm just talking about the basics here. As always, these videos are just me fucking rambling to the camera. Let's just start talking about this gear. Now, these first two, these are just patch bays. I have one of these already. It's on my rack behind these right now. Both of these, this is a stereo patch bay, which is awesome. Right now, I don't have a use for this because none of my stuff is stereo. My board, my console is all unbalanced connections, so I don't have a use for this yet, but one day, this is going to become very useful. Both of these were sent to me by a fan of the channel. Very nice. I just had to pay for shipping. I think it was like $20 for both of these. Very awesome. So, not much to talk about with those. Again, they're just patch bays. Very nice for someone to send me those. Now, let's look at this stuff. Now, let's talk about how I acquired this gear, because, one, it's kind of an interesting story, and two, there is kind of an overarching story of buying gear and trying to get it for cheap. So, this gear here, I've mentioned before, there's a guy up the block. I mentioned it in the series. There's a guy up this block who had a recording studio. I asked for advice when I first started recording. I knew he had a recording studio. He used to mow his lawn, yada, yada, yada. You heard it all before. But anyway, a few times a year in my neighborhood, they have bulk trash pickup, where everyone puts all their big trash outside. And I have found so many good things throughout the year, both audio-related, tool-related, whatever related. I found so much stuff that people throw away. So anyway, on those times of the year when people throw stuff out, I just drive around my neighborhood and find stuff and look through garbage and see what I can find. I drive past that guy's house, and there's someone cleaning out his garage. And, you know, the selfish part of me was like, someone's cleaning out his house. I wonder if there's any music gear they're cleaning out. So anyway, I opened up my mouth. I said, excuse me, does Steve still live here? Blah, 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 blah. To make a long story short, he was upstairs. They're like, go in to talk to him. I go to talk to him, and all of his music gear is gone. He used to have like a whole studio. All his music gear is gone, except for a few things. And I was like, oh, Steve, how you doing? I just want to see if, looks like you're parting out your equipment. I want to see if you want to sell anything. He was like, I have a few things left. Come take a look, see what you want. I go into the room. The room was a mess. There was no lights in the room. It was very dark. I couldn't really see, but there was just like kind of stuff stacked on top of each other. So he was like, take a look, see what you could find, see if there's anything of interest. So when I was there was a lot of things. A lot of the stuff was, he had sold all the good stuff already. There seemed to be kind of a lot of like cheap stuff that I wasn't interested in. But there was a few things that caught my eye. The first thing was this Ashley compressor. I saw this baby and I said, oh boy, you know I love Ashley compressors. And this SC50 is a precursor to the, oh boy, hold on, to the CL52 up here. All the Ashley compressors sound very similar, work on very similar principles, but this is a precursor. This is they call it the blackface block logo. This is, I think, early 80s here. I saw this, and the last thing I need is another Ashley VCA compressor, but how could I say no to this thing? Look at it. I mean, it's just beautiful. I love it. I'm going to make use of it. We're going to open it up in a second. We're going to take a look inside, but awesome. I couldn't say no to that. The next thing I saw was this delay here. I have a delay, it's kind of hard to see, hold on, down there, whatever. You've seen it before. It is the Fostex analog delay or digital delay. It's the 3180. I don't know, for whatever reason, I just don't love it. There isn't like a good reason. There really isn't a good reason. It's just, most of the times I try it, it lacks the magic for me. So I saw this delay, this digital time delay, and it just looked interesting to me. And so I was interested in that as well. And then I asked him, hey, is there anything else in here you think I'd be interested in? Like, what do you think would benefit my recordings the most? And he points to this preamp. He goes, oh, that preamp's pretty good. And I knew nothing about this preamp. I've heard the name Dan Alexander before, but if you were to ask me who is Dan Alexander, I'd be like, I think he's some recording engineer. I just, like I said, I've heard the name, but I don't know much about it. And he said, well, that's a good preamp. I recommend you get that, but I'm going to want a pretty penny for it. And I said, well, to be honest, I don't have that much money right now. I'm waiting to get paid. Whatever I offer you is going to be for a cheap price. You know, I don't want you to be offended in any way. I always say that. Whenever I'm about to lowball someone, I always say I don't want to offend you. It does wonders, trust me. If you're looking to get a deal on something, just say I don't want to be offensive. And I wound up offering him, for all three pieces of gear, $300. And he wanted more at first. He wanted $300 just for the preamp. And I don't remember what I said. I said something to help sweeten his mind, and he said, all right, we'll do $300. So in my head, we got this compressor for $50, this digital delay for $50, and we got this preamp for $200. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Now, it wasn't until I got home that I realized what this actually was. And we're going to open it up, and you're going to see basically what I saw. It made me go, oh, fuck. Did I just buy what I think I just bought? And if you know anything about this, To make a long story short, when I was leaving, he goes, "Oh, I don't know if you know anything about Neve style preamps, but that's what that is. That's a Neve style preamp." And I was like, "Oh, I know what Neve preamps are, yeah." And he's like, "When I bought this at Guitar Center, I think he bought it in the early 2000s. He was like, they were so excited for me." So anyway, let's open it up and you will see what I saw when I got home. All right, you guys ready? Let's open this bad boy up. And let me zoom in on a specific part here. Hold on, let me take the back cover off. Let me zoom in very close here. Okay, so now that's in focus, you could read that's a B283 AV Neve. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'll explain. This is one of the original circuit boards that was used in Neve consoles. And I'll explain the intricacies here in a second. Now, you've probably heard of, if you know anything about preamps, the Neve 1073. That's like one of the most famous preamps out there in the recording realm. The Neve 1073 was built with this board in conjunction with a 284 board. It was both of these boards. This, what I have here, this board was just used in the Neve 1272 modules. Now, that was never used as a microphone preamp. That was actually used as a line amplifier in consoles. However, Dan Alexander here, and plenty of other DIYers and cloners out there, use that circuitry and mimic a preamp with that circuit board. Again, that's not how Neve originally designed this board to be used, but you could use it with varying different resistor values here on varying pins on the circuit board, and you're able to amplify microphone level signals. Now, again, you know, you could get this stuff as clone kits very easily and for reasonable prices, but to me, having all original Neve stuff is pretty damn cool, man. And again, I bought this without even knowing what it was. When I opened it up and saw that B283 on there, I was like, holy crap. So that's pretty cool. I haven't even used this yet for any recordings. I've just ran some test signals through it and it's working fine. It's pretty damn cool. There's more I could talk about it. I could nerd out a little bit, but I don't know if it's really necessary. To make a long story short, this is a Neve 1272 style microphone preamplifier. It's not going to have all of the mojo as a 1073 would. It also doesn't have the EQ section. But again, I think it's pretty cool. And a piece of history. I mean, you really cannot get these boards anymore. This was built in the early 2000s. And eventually, Dan Alexander, I think, ran out of the original components, the two transformers in that circuit board, and I think he started making his own circuit boards with the, mimicking the components. Don't quote me on that, but this is one of the early versions of Dan's preamp, so very cool. I'm happy about it. That was just an awesome find that kind of just fell onto my lap. Alright, next piece of gear is this MXR digital time delay, and the function here and sound and effects are very similar to the digital delay that I have already, the Fostex. However, again, I've just never been quite happy with that one. I wanted to try something new. One thing that definitely stood out to me when I saw it is that the maximum delay time is slightly longer than the Fostex. This is 320. I think that one is 250, I think. Regardless, that extra 70 milliseconds or so actually makes a gigantic difference because I always thought on the Fostex that delay time is slightly not long enough. Now, this 320, in testing I've done it, actually seems to be at a really good time that I'm like, that actually sounds like I kind of want a delay to sound. So that's pretty cool. Have you seen in the other video, the gain staging video I did, that the gain staging into this unit is a lot more temperamental compared to the Fostex. The Fostex one has a built-in limiter on the input section, so it makes things so much easier. This thing is you got to be a little careful with. Now, let's look up top here. You can see there's a crap ton of IC chips in there that does all the delay stuff. It would probably do me good to replace the electrolytic capacitors in here. I mean, there's only a couple. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that for a few of these pieces of equipment. This would be another good piece of equipment that would favor well from replacing the electrolytic capacitors, as well as the blue face Ashley I have down there, the equalizer. You see that little globe logo there, the Ashley globe style EQ. That's probably, is that the oldest piece of outboard gear I have? Probably. The blue face is like, I think, mid to late 70s. The black face block, I think is early 80s. Anyway, this gear is getting, what, 60 years old at this point? Is that right? Am I doing the math right? No, that can't be right. 40 years old? I don't know. Something like that. 40 years old. So replacing the capacitors would probably do them good. Really not much to see in there. I already did a kind of a look over when I first bought this equipment. Nothing really jumping out at me that seemed bad. Nothing, no burn marks, no nothing. Not much to look at there. Now, let's talk about this Ashley now. All right, the Ashley SC50. Now, this thing, and really to me, all Ashley compressors have become legendary at this point. They've been used on countless records. Maybe not the most high-end records, but in the everyday, average working man studio, these things were everywhere. And from what I could tell, all Ashley compressors have pretty much stayed the same in form and function. I don't know much about the schematics. I'm not the person to ask about that. But as far as controls go and sound, they all sound very similar to me. The attack variables as well as the release variables are basically the same. The 0.2 milliseconds to 20 milliseconds on every single piece of Ashley compressor that I've had. Same exact settings. The release settings are almost the same. This one goes to a maximum of 2 seconds, whereas the CL52s up there go up to 3 seconds. But other than that, everything else is the same. Now, on this unit, the gain reduction LED meter is a lot less, minute in signal. What am I trying to say? There's less LEDs. That's what I'm trying to fucking say, okay? There's less LEDs than my other compressors. Like up there, the Ashley ones, like this, you can see here. I mean, there's a lot more meters there to get a better idea how much gain reduction you're getting. But at the end of the day, does it really matter? No, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the difference between -3 and -6, when the meters are, bouncing, that's not the right word, but when they're going off, you could get a good idea when the levels are around -4, -5. It's not that big of a deal that there's that many gain reduction LED meters. The bigger thing is that there's no input or output meters on this, so you're gonna have to use your ears, but that's no problem. You should be using your ears anyway. It just makes it a little easier when you're using a piece of equipment like this. You could see pretty quickly if your input or outputs are clipping the unit or clipping your next piece of gear in the signal line, but not a big deal. It doesn't really affect my life that much. Now, you can see I already opened it up. You can see that there's remnants of foam here. The foam that they used early on in these Ashley gears is just known to be a problem. Makes a mess. You can see that there's really not much going on here. You can see there's a slew of IC chips. You'll see a lot of people talk online, mainly Jim Williams of Audio Upgrades, talking about upgrading a few components on, actually, he recommends upgrading every single component on these machines, or these units. But personally for me, I don't care that much, okay? I was thinking about it. I was like, maybe it would be cool to upgrade the IC chips in here and upgrade the matching transistor pairs here that are the VCA of this actual compressor. But when I started to look into it, I was like, man, I don't really have the time to get into this. I don't have the money to get into this. Maybe it would just be nice to replace the electrolytic capacitors in here. Again, this unit's really old, so it would benefit from that, in the power section as well. Just to replace the maybe 10 or so capacitors in here. I mean, that'd be a quick job. It'd be a cheap job. And something that would, benefit me in the long run, right? Because even if this stuff is working right now, one, it's probably not even close to spec anymore. But two, in looking at it long term, if I replace it with electrolytic capacitors, I mean, all things considered, it should last me a considerable amount of time. Now, this last piece of gear we already talked about in previous videos. That's the one I saw on Craigslist in my video on what to buy for garage music, etc., etc. Offered the guy 25 bucks, gave it to me for 25 bucks. That's a good deal. Not much to say about this. I do think I am still going to give it out in one of these videos. I think I'm going to give it out in one of my more scripted videos. I think someone else would, benefit from that. Again, I like to give it to someone young getting into recording, but it doesn't really matter. That's basically it. Now, as you could tell, and you probably know, my rack is full. My rack is full. So what do I do here? I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 pieces of outboard gear I want to put on there. The preamp's going to go up there with the rest of my preamps. But the outboard gear, I have 3 more, and I don't have room for it. So I have 2 options. I could either get rid of some of this gear, or I could get another rack that's probably going to go under the board there. I'm probably going to do a combination of two. If I start using that digital time delay and I like that one better than the Fostex, I might get rid of the Fostex. The thing is, it's like, no one wants to buy these. I was trying to sell I used to have two of these. I was trying to sell another one on eBay for like a year. No one wanted it. Finally, a fan of the channel found my ad on Craigslist and was like, Mario, is that you? And I was like, yeah, that's me, baby. And I wound up selling it to him for $100. I hope he's happy with it, but again, it's like, to sell it for $100, is it really worth it? Especially on eBay with all the fees and everything, and the taxes. It's like, is it even worth selling this thing for $100, or should I just keep it, you know, on my storage rack here? And then one day when I'm mixing a song where I'm like, man, I wish I had two digital delays, I could just pull it out and put it on a chair somewhere and hook it up, right? So, I don't know. We'll think about it. Maybe we'll take that out regardless. Again, I have to test out the new MXR delay before I make the decision. One compressor that I'm thinking about getting rid of, because, look, at this point, how many VCA compressors do I really need? I try to use compression as little as possible when I'm doing my mixing. Now, with my new setup, as you know, I'm able to add compressors very easily as inserts to all of my channels. But, again, it's like my type of recording ethos. I don't know if it makes sense to have this many VCA compressors. So I have been thinking about getting rid of this Orban. And you might be asking why? Why do you want to get rid of that one? Why do you don't want to get rid of one of the other Ashley compressors? And honestly, I don't really have a good reason. It sounds very similar to my other compressors, but for whatever reason, maybe it has nothing to do with how it sounds. Maybe it's just the knobs. Maybe it's the way it looks. When I go to grab a compressor to use, that's when I kind of go to the least. I love the DBX160X just for its ease of use. It's so easy to use. The over easy knob is very useful. You know, I love that compressor, so I definitely wouldn't get rid of that one. But again, it's like, do I really need this many Ashley compressors in conjunction with my SC50? Probably not, but honestly, I'd rather get rid of the Orban and replace it with the Ashley there. Now, all this considered, I'm eventually going to get more outboard gear, right? I already said I want to get an 1176 style compressor. So at that point, I think that's a 2-unit outboard piece of gear, right? So that's going to be the thickness of this patch bay here, right? So if that's the case, no matter what, I'm going to have to get another rack. So maybe I'll just get another rack, keep this stuff here for now, see what I use, see what I don't use. I still haven't done any major recordings yet. So, like, I don't really know what I'm going to be using. I've done a lot of talking, not a lot of recording, and that's kind of like the opposite of what I want this channel to be about, right? I want it to be talking about my personal experiences recording and not just fucking talking about gear. I was going to say something. Hold on. Give me a moment. Yes, the other thing I was going to talk about was I've been heavily considering getting a lot of pieces of gear, but I have been considering getting some sort of dedicated master bus compressor, because I'm using that Ashley CL52E, and as I stated in the past, it's a pain in the ass having the two separate input and output controls for each left and right channel. It becomes kind of a burden sometimes. It is kind of a one-trick pony. It's a very transparent sounding compressor, and I would like to see if I like other types of master bus compressors. I have been looking at the Drummer, I think it's the 1979 model. I don't know if it's a 1978 or 1979, but it's a master bus compressor. It has much more functionality and different sounds you could dial in. I forget what the price point was, but I think it's like around $600 to $800. I kind of forget, but that's something I could save up for and reasonably buy, right? And it's not going to be a super large hit to my wallet. So I am considering that. Last thing I want to talk about is room treatment. I know I keep talking about it. I'm not doing anything about it. Well, let me show you something. I just got in the mail two things. I got, give me a second, let me get my EV635A. Okay, let's go walking around. I'm not going to shake the camera. Hold on, give me a moment. Alright, over here I have 3 big cardboard boxes. Not that exciting, but what's inside is also not that exciting. But it's acoustic treatment material. Raw material, baby. Now I have, what is it? 6, 12, 18 2-inch panels, 2 by 4 feet. And before I purchased this, it was a considerable amount of change just for these panels themselves. I think it was $300. It was $100 for each of these cardboard boxes. I did so much double checking of how much I actually needed. I must have did the math 10 separate times, and somehow, before I started making this video, I realized I didn't buy enough. My dumbass miscalculated somewhere. I didn't buy enough. But I'll show you what I have planned. And let me make sure I'm not going to step on any of these things here. I also bought for the outer covering this burlap material, which wound up being a mistake, I think. I really shouldn't have bought this. The reason I bought it was just because it was cheaper. It was, I think, $60 for this roll, which will do all of what I'm planning to do. If I would have bought something like Guilford of Maine, is that what it's called? Guilford of Maine fabric that's meant for like acoustic panels, it would have ran me like $160, I think. It would have cost $100 more. And listen, here's the thing. When you buy stuff and you're going to have it long term, you have to do a little math and weighing in your head. You're going to say, okay, should I spend more money up front and do it right? Or do I cheap out now and just try to make buy? And ultimately, just with money being tight lately, I was just like, let me just get the burlap. But now that I have it in my hand, I'm feeling it, I'm looking at it, this was a mistake. I should have just spent the extra $100 and got the right material, because I bet you one day, you know, a few years from now, I'm going to eventually wind up replacing the fabric on the panels, right? I'm going to make the panels right now with the wood and everything, put this on, but I know one day I'm going to go, I should replace that fabric. But for now, that'll be fine. I have yet to buy the wood. I have to wait until next Friday, which is my payday, to buy the actual wood, because that's also going to be another significant chunk of change just to buy the wood to make the panels. Now, this is what I'm planning. For the panels I have there, I have enough to make one 2x4 panel, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's 2 cardboard boxes right there, 6 panels. That third cardboard box, this is where I did my miscalculation, was for the bass trap. So I'm going to put one 7-foot one here, right behind the drum kit. Because of the door here, I'm going to have a 5-foot one here. I'm going to have to take down these pictures. A 5-foot one here. I was thinking about moving this rack and doing the whole, what would that be, like 20 feet? But I think I'm just going to wind up mirroring this side, 5 feet, 5 feet, and then I'm not going to have enough material for it, but I was planning on doing a 4-foot one here, taking down this picture, taking down the shelf and doing a 4-foot one, but I don't have enough material. So I think I'm going to make the other 3, and I'm going to listen to the room, hear how it sounds, and if it's up to my standards, maybe I'll just leave this corner as is. I don't know. We'll see. That's a pretty important corner because it's close to my monitor, so having, you know, bass traps in the corner would be ideal, but we'll see. And that's really it. There's one last thing I want to talk about before I end this video. I think this is probably one of the worst videos of this series. I'm getting worse and worse at talking to the camera. You'd think I'd be getting better. While I was there at my neighbor up the street getting equipment, I saw this power conditioner, and I offered him 20 bucks, and he said, okay, so I got it for 20 bucks. You can see I have it right now zip-tied sideways. The reason I wanted this was 2 reasons. One, so I could plug in my amplifiers, and it could be, you know, cleaning the sound. I don't know how well this thing actually does to clean the sound. It's just a cheap Furman power conditioner. But it should help a little bit, I would hope, right? But the second benefit is the light switch in this room. I don't know if I talked about this yet in one of my videos, but the light switch, you can see I have a plastic cover on here, and that is because this light switch very inconveniently controls, let's just turn it off, controls the outlet on this side of the wall. Now, when this is a bedroom, that's nice because it's like, oh, let me turn on the light in here, right? You can turn on the light when you walk in, turns on the whatever, you know, you have connected to the wall in the bedroom, but this being my studio, it's very not ideal because that is where I plug in my amplifiers. So I don't want to accidentally, for me or someone in the recording room, to turn off this switch accidentally while the amplifiers are on or recording, whatever the case is. So that's why I put that little cover on there, so I think twice about it before I, you know, click the switch. So the second part about it is because this switch functions both as power to these amplifiers as well as the light when I walk in this room, because to kind of better explain, the fan light, I have to use the pull chain. This does not control the fan light. So when I walk in this room, I use this to turn on the light. I don't want to accidentally, which I've done multiple times already, leave these amplifiers on. So sometimes I'll get confused, I'll leave these amplifiers on, and maybe I'll just come in here to get, I don't know, I need the tape measure, or I need something in here. I'll come in here real quick, turn on the light to see what I'm doing. It'll turn on the amps, I'll get my stuff, I'll come out, I'll turn off the light switch, and I turn off the amp. And I'm like cycling the amps. So that's obviously not ideal, especially when you have a tube amp. You don't want to be cycling on and off your tube amp unnecessarily. So by plugging in these amplifiers to this power switch, you know, now I'm sending power to the amps. I'm also turning it off now. And that also controls my pedal board. Because that was another thing. Whenever I came on the room, even though my amps, you know, I remember to turn my amps off, I wasn't turning the amps on. When I did that switch, it turned on my pedal board every time. Now, does it really matter if my pedal board's on? No. I mean, come on. It doesn't really matter, but it was just kind of annoying to me. Every time I walked in here, I would have to turn on the light and the pedal board would turn on. I don't know. Guys, I'm rambling. This video sucks. Why do you guys watch this shit? I don't know. That's basically it, though. I don't really know what else to talk about. Anything else? I've been doing a lot of practicing lately of my in-person set. What am I trying to say? My music set? Where it's like the one-man band, guitars on the while I sit on the drums and play with my feet. I'm thinking about doing a little more playing. I've been asked by a couple fans of the channel if I'd be willing to do some shows, you know, live shows, and, you know, open for them. And it'd be nice just to keep myself in practice, as well as it'd be a good opportunity for me to sell my album, because you guys have stopped buying my record. I think the core fans of the channel, you guys all bought the record like as soon as I put it out, but now it really slowed down and I haven't sold one in a while, and I have a bunch of them on hand and I want to sell them. So it would be a good opportunity for me to sell them. If you're still watching this video, listen, if you have made it this far in this video and you haven't bought my record yet, I'm a little offended. You're willing to listen to me fucking ramble on for this long and you haven't bought my record? What is wrong with you? It's $25. Buy it, okay? Alright, I'm going to end the video. Hope you guys are doing well. As always, I really enjoy when you guys comment in general. I read every single comment. I love the discussions. I like when you guys push back on stuff and say I'm an idiot. I like to debate stuff. So if you're watching this video and you don't normally comment, say something, say anything. I don't know. It's fun. I like to read them. It's you know, this obviously has turned into like a hobby for me to this YouTube stuff. So it's fun. I don't know. All right. Okay. Get off YouTube. Let this be a reminder to get off YouTube and record some music. All right. Peace, brothers.